Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time coming across my page, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. So in today's tutorial, we'll be talking about how to draft a basic skirt block. And these are the measurements we'll be using in drafting the basic skirt block. We have the waist, the hip, the skirt length, the hip depth, the center front waist to floor. That's this measurement is taken from the center front of the person to the waist to the skirt length, and this one is the center back waist to floor measurement, and this measurement is taken from the center back of the person to the skirt length. So the next thing is to get your pattern paper, and the pattern paper should be, the width of the pattern paper should be the hip measurement, the hip circumference, half of the hip circumference. That will be the width of the paper. So we'll measure 2 inches from the edge of the paper, and that will be the top line. We measure 2 inches. And this is the top line. So because this width of the paper is more than half of my hip measurements, I'll just divide the paper into 2 and I'll mark my measurements from there. So the width of this paper is 24 inches, half of it is 12, so I'll just mark 12 inches down. Just to get half of the paper. So that's half of the paper. So the next thing I'll be doing, I'll mark the front hip arc and the back hip arc. So this is our back, this is for the back, and this side is for the front. So for the arc measurement is the front, we are going to, because the back hip is bigger than the front hip, so to get the arc measurement is the front hip divided by 4 minus 0.25. The hip circumference is 36 divided by 4 minus 0.25 will give me 8.75, and for the back hip arc, 36 divided by 4 plus 0.25 will give me 9.25. So for the front, I'm going to mark 8.75, while for the back, I'll be marking 9.25 as the hip measurements. So I'll just mark this as a straight line down to the edge of the paper also, 8.75. While for the back, I'll use 9.25, which is the back hip arc. So I'll measure 9.25 from this center line. I'll mark 9.25 down also. So the next measurement I'll take is the skirt length, and this skirt length is 18. So I'll be measuring 18 from this top line downwards. I'll measure 18, which is skirt length. After that, I'll take 2 inches as the hem allowance. I'll measure 2 inches after the 18 inches, which is the skirt length. I'll measure 2 inches, which will be the hem allowance. So the next thing, I will take the front waist arc and the back waist arc. So to get the front waist arc is 27, which is waist circumference, divided by 4 plus 0.25, which will give me 7. And for the back waist arc, 27 divided by 4 minus 0.25, which is 6.5. In the body measurements, the front waist is always bigger than the back waist. That's why we're adding to the front waist and subtracting from the back waist. So for the front waist is 7. So from this center front, and this is the center front, and this is the center back, while this is the side seam. So from this center front, I'll mark the waist. Before that, I'll mark the hip depth. I'll mark the hip depth, and the hip depth is 8.5. So I'll mark it from the top line. I'll mark 8.5. And I'll square it across the paper. This is the hip depth. This is the hip depth, or the hip line. So the next thing, I'll mark the front waist arc, and the front waist arc is 7. So I'll mark it from this center front. I'll mark 7. And for the back waist arc is 6.5. I'll mark it from the center back line. I'll mark 6.5. So the next thing, we're going to measure the amount we have here, and I'm having 1.7. The distance from this line to this actual side seam is 0.7. So that 0.7, I'm going to divide it by 2, and it will give me 0.8. If I divide it by 2, 1.7 divided by 2 is 0.8. I'll mark the 0.8, which is at this point here. So also I'll mark the distance from this back to the side seam. The distance is 2.7, and 2.7 divided by 2 is 1.35. So I'll mark 1.35 here. And this will be the new side seam. We're no longer using this point. This point we'll mark first. We're no longer using it. We're no longer using this point. Also, this point will mark ourselves. We're no longer using it. We're not going to be using this as the new side seam. So we're going to locate the point. We'll be marking this new side seam on this side, on the side seam line. We're going to divide the hip depth by 4, and our hip depth is 8.5. 8.5 divided by 4 is 2.1. So I'll mark 2.1 from this hip depth line upward. I'll mark 2.1, and that's the point I'll be connecting this new side seam to. So I'll connect it this way, from this new side seam to the 2.1 point I marked, and I'll also connect I also connect this side also. The next thing is to get the darts. To get the dart for the front, you just mark 4 inches standard, or you can use the bust span measurement, but we'll mark 4 inches, which is the standard measurement. We'll mark 4 inches, and the point at which we'll be marking that 4 inches is the half of the hip depth, and the hip depth is 8.5. 8.5 divided by 2 is 4.25. So that's the length of the dart, 4.25. So we'll mark 4.25 from this top line here, and I'll also mark 4, which is the dart line. So this is where this front dart will stop, and I'll draw the straight line. While to mark the dart line for the back, we'll just measure from this center back line to the new side seam, and it's 8. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I'll also mark 4 at this back area. And to get the dart line, the length of the dart line, we'll mark 2.1 inches up, which is the hip depth divided by 4. That will be the length of the back dart. So I'll mark 2.1 inches upward, and I'll also mark 4 inches, which is the dart line, Then I'll draw a straight line, and that's the dart line for the back, to stop at this 2.1 points I marked. So the trickish part here, to get the dart amount at the back, first we'll measure the distance from this actual side seam to this new side seam in the front, and we'll measure from this actual side seam to this new side seam at the back. We'll add them together and divide it by 3. So for this back, I'm going to measure the distance from this actual side seam to this new side seam. I'm going to measure it, and I'm having 1.3. So 1.3 plus 0.8 points here, and in this part I'm having 0.8. So I'll add 1.3 plus 0.8, and to give me 2.1. Let me repeat that again. To get the dart amount for the back, whatever you have, this is the actual side seam we marked before. From this actual side seam to this new side seam, whatever you have in front, and this actual side seam to this new side seam, whatever you have at the back, you add them together and you divide it by 3. So in this place here, I'm having 1.3. Why at the front, at the back I'm having 1.3, why at the front I'm having 0.8. So 1.3 plus 0.8 is 2.1. 2.1 divided by 3 is 0.7. So for the back, the dart amount on both sides of the dart will be 0.7. So I'll mark 0.7 on this side and also on this place, and I'll connect it to this point I mark where the dart will stop. So that's to get the dart for the back. While to get the dart for the front, whatever you have as the dart amount in the back, you divide it by 2. So I have 0.7 at the back. 0.7 divided by 2 give me 0.35. So for the front, I'll mark 0.3 on both sides of the dart line. So I'll mark 0.3 on this side and on this other side of the dart line, and I'll also connect it to the point, to half of the hip depth. So that's it about the darts. While for the hem, to tape the hem, I'll just measure 1 inch on this side seam. I'll measure 1 inch on both sides of the side seam, at the front and at the back. I'll measure 1 inch also at the back. Then I'll connect it to 1 inch below the hip depth. I'll mark 1 inch below the hip depth, and that's where I'll be connecting the taping to. Connect it at the back also. And also at the center back, just to have the bum illusion at the center back, I will be taping 0.5 at the hem, and I'll connect it also to 1 inch below the hip line at the center back. So the next thing is to check if our waist is correct, because it's important to check the waist to avoid shortage. So I'll be checking for the back waist. The back waist I'm supposed to be having, after removing the dart, the amount I'm supposed to be having at the back is supposed to be 6.5. So I'm going to measure it. I'm having 3.2 here. So I'll omit this dart place and I'll bring it here, and I'm having 6.5, which is the back waist arc. And I'll do the same thing for the front. I'll measure from this point to this point. I'll omit this dart also, and I'll measure from this point to the front. So I'm having 3.6 here. Then I'll take that 3.6 and place it on this side here, and I'm having 7 inches. I'm having 7 inches, which is the front waist arc. So that's it about the basic skirt block. So the next thing is the center front waist measurement. So for most people, their tummy is either too big, and the side seam and the center and the front waist of the skirt will not be the same. So after taking that measurement, for this person, the center front waist to floor measurement is 17.5. So I will be measuring 17.5 from this actual line here, not the hem allowance. I'll be measuring 17.5 from this actual line upward. So I'll measure 17.5, and this is 17.5 point marked here. And from this 17.5 mark, this side seam needs to remain the same. I'll measure it with a slight curve. I'll measure it back to the side seam. And also for the center back waist to floor measurement is 18.5. So this 18.5, because some people the butt might be big at the back, so you have to take this center back waist to floor measurement and also the center front waist to floor measurement just to be accurate, so the skirt will not be either lifting at the front or raising at the back. So this center back waist to floor measurement is 18.5. So I'll be measuring 18.5 from this actual line, from the actual skirt length. I'll be measuring it upward. So I'll measure 18.5 this way, and it's at this point here. At this point here. So I'll mark from this point, this 18.5 point, to the side seam with a curve also. Just with a slight curve, I'll be marking it. and this is the basic skirt block.